To continue with the demonstration of RegressIt, let's play with the regression models in the test file. Start on the Model 1.0 worksheet. Before rerunning it, click the Summaries button on the ribbon. This will jump you to the Model Summaries worksheet, which is always the rightmost sheet in the file. This worksheet is a very distinctive feature of RegressIt. It contains a journal article-style table of side-by-side statistics for all regression models that have ever been fitted in this workbook, even those ones whose sheets were later deleted. It's a tool for directly comparing model parameters when doing your analysis and when creating reports for presentation. It also provides an even more detailed view of the audit trail for regression models. It contains the summary statistics of the models, R-squared and all that, as well as some diagnostic tests of model assumptions and the estimated coefficients of the variables. Here you see the results for the 5 regression models that have already been fitted. If you toggle the Show All button while positioned on this sheet, you can collapse the display to show only the summary statistics of each model, not the diagnostic stats and coefficients. The Colors button can be used to selectively apply color coding to the coefficient estimates, with blue for positive values and red for negative values, and darker colors for more significant ones, as in the correlation matrix. The Fonts button similarly applies darker fonts to more significant values. Now let's check out the linear regression options and fit some new models. Click the Last Model button to return to Model 1.0. Then click the Linear Regression button, which opens up the dialog box for running a new model. There are quite a few options for producing output, and by default, the same ones that were used on the Model 1.0 sheet are checked here. Before hitting Run, note that there is a plus sign next to each of the checkboxes. If you click the plus sign, you'll get a pop-up note that explains its use. For example, here's the note that explains the normal quantile plot. So, if the options look complicated at first, you can learn about their functions by reading the notes. One more thing to do before hitting Run. Check the box for the table of residuals and influence measures. It was included in the Model 1.0 analysis, but this feature does not have memory because the table could be huge for a large dataset. Now hit the Run button without changing anything else in order to rerun exactly the same analysis. After the new model sheet is produced, click the Zoom Out button a few times to see all the output, which includes 8 charts in this case. Then zoom back to 100%. Now hit the Last Model button to toggle back and forth between the new model and the old one to see that they are the same. Normally you will use this tool to toggle between models that are different. This model is a simple regression of y on x1. The line fit plot appears near the top of the worksheet, and it includes confidence bands around the regression line. The Editable Chart option has been used, and you can vary the confidence level by clicking the Confidence Plus and Confidence Minus buttons on the ribbon and watch the effects. The bands get wider and narrower as you do this. This analysis includes out-of-sample forecast for the 5 missing values of y. The forecasts appear in both the table and chart, whose confidence limits are interactive. The Confidence Plus and Confidence Minus buttons make the limits wider and narrower here too, in both the table and chart. If you jump further down the worksheet with the Down button, you'll see a number of different plots of the predictions and errors of the model. At the very bottom, you'll find the residual table, which includes predictions and several measures of errors and influence. All of the chart titles on the worksheet include the model name, dependent variable name, number of variables, and sample size by default. This is useful information to have in view when flipping back and forth between worksheets or when copying charts to reports. The titles can be customized. More about that later. Now hit the Top button to return to the top of the worksheet. The tables have the same information in title rows above them. These rows are hidden by default when the model is first run, but you can display them by toggling the Titles button on the ribbon, as shown here. You should include this row for audit trail purposes when copying a table elsewhere. If you turn on the titles and then toggle the Show All button to hide all the tables and charts, you will see just an outline view of the contents of the worksheet, from which you can selectively open a single kind of output if you wish. Now hit the Show All button again to reopen all the output and toggle the Titles button to re-hide the titles. By the way, one of the other outputs at the top of the sheet is the model equation in text form, which is sometimes useful for copying to reports. Notice that when we reran Model 1.0, the default name for the new model was Model 1.1. This illustrates the default model numbering scheme used by RegressIt. If the model name ends in a number preceded by a space or period, the default name of the next model is the same, except with that number increased by 1. You can also type any name you want when you run a new model. Here's another important feature to look at before we continue, the Teaching Notes feature. Notice that many cells on the model sheet have little red flags in their upper right corners. This means they contain comments, which could consist of many paragraphs of text. If you move the mouse over a cell with the red flag, the comment will pop up. Most of the comments are teaching notes that explain how to interpret the various statistics and charts. For example, here's the note that explains R². Other comments contain more layers of detail about the model. Here's what's underneath the model name cell. It includes audit trail information such as the runtime, current file name, and computer name. You can also display the comment by clicking on the cell and hitting the View button on the ribbon. This will cause the comment to be displayed in the top center of the Excel window, which is better in narrow screens or on touch screens. The red flags can be toggled on and off by hitting the Notes button. At present, RegressIt contains about 10,000 words of pop-up teaching notes and checkbox instructions, and much more is planned. These notes could be customized to fit a course or program. Let us know if you're interested. Now hit the Last Model button to return to the Model 1.0 sheet. Then hit the right button to move to Model 2.0. This is a simple regression model with no constant, which means the regression line is forced to pass through the origin of coordinates, which is not a good idea in this case. Normally you don't remove the constant. This model is included only for purposes of testing all model options. Before rerunning it, though, notice that something funny is going on. Model 2.0 obviously doesn't fit the data as well as Model 1.0, yet its R² is bigger, 95%, compared to about 50% for Model 1. Does this mean Model 2.0 is better? No. When there's no constant, R² does not have the same definition. It measures the improvement over a model that predicts all values of y to be 0, whereas in a model with a constant, R² measures the improvement over a model that predicts all values of y to equal the mean. Don't judge a model by R². Keep your eye on the bottom line, which is usually the standard error of the regression. Now hit the Run button to rerun Model 2.0, just to make sure it works okay for you. You'll get a new sheet called Model 2.1. Next, hit the Last Model button, followed by the Right button, to go to the worksheet for Model 3.0, which is a multiple regression model with all 5 x variables. Click the Linear Regression button, then hit Run to rerun the model. You should get the same output on a new sheet called Model 3.1. You can toggle the Colors and Fonts buttons here to apply color and font coding to the t-statistics and standardized coefficients of the variables, to highlight the ones that are most significant. The formatting of the t-stats is the same as on the Model Summaries sheet. Not all of the independent variables are statistically significant in this model. In particular, variables x2 and x4 have p-values well above 0.05. Recall that in the descriptive analysis, we found that x2 had almost zero correlation with y, and x4 seemed like it might be redundant with x1. You can sort the coefficient table on p-values, which is helpful for finding the least significant ones when there's a large number of variables. Let's do that now. Position the cursor anywhere in the coefficient table, click the Filter button on the ribbon, Then click the arrow above the p-value column to sort from smallest to largest. This will send x2 and x4 to the bottom. If you hit the linear regression button to launch another regression model from this sheet, its defaults will include the same variables and output options by default, as we saw before. If you want to remove insignificant variables before relaunching the regression procedure, click on their rows in the coefficient table and hit the Remove button on the ribbon. Toggling the Remove button causes its line in the coefficient table to be grayed out, as I'm doing here with x4. And if you launch another regression model when it is grayed out, it will no longer be pre-selected. This method of sequentially removing variables is usually more efficient than looking them up in the original list of all variables and unchecking their boxes. Let's go ahead and run the model without x4, getting a new sheet called Model 3.2. Here we see that x2 remains very insignificant. Let's click on its row and hit the Remove button to flag it for removal from the next model, and turn on one other model option, Customize Titles. This is something you'll occasionally want to do for presentation. After hitting Run, you get a prompt for a custom model name to be used in table and chart titles. Let's enter Final Model for Y. Here's the output, and if you click the Titles button, you can see that the custom title is used in both tables and charts. If you click the History button to display the updated history list, you'll see that it now includes the 3 new stats analyses and 5 new regression models, and you'll see the custom name among the model parameters for Model 3.3. While the history box is still open, use it to jump to Model 4.0, which is the same as Model 3.0 except with no constant. The no constant option is included only for completeness in testing the model types. As in Model 2.0, it has a suspiciously high value of r², but this doesn't mean it is a good model. Hit Run to rerun it, just to make sure it works for you. Finally, rerun Model 5.0. Hit the Last Model button, and then the Right button, to get to its sheet. This is a constant-only model, which merely predicts all values of y to equal the mean. It has an r² of 0 by definition. This, too, is a model you don't normally bother to fit, but it provides a baseline against which to compare the models that also include one or more independent variables. When you fit a constant-only model, you have the option to specify an independent variable against which to plot the regression line, which is a horizontal line rather than a sloping line in this case. Let's specify x1 as the variable to plot against for comparison to the original simple regression model. Here's the output, which includes the horizontal regression line. Use the History tool to jump back to Model 1.0, then toggle the Last Model button to toggle back and forth to Model 5.1 and see the difference in their line fit plots, horizontal versus sloping. Both lines pass through the center of mass of the data, the means of both variables. If you go from Model 1.0 to Model 2.0, you see the third possibility for a regression line, one that passes through the origin. Another tool that can be used to move directly from one regression model to another is the Relatives button. If you click this button, you see a box that shows the parents and children of this model, if any. This provides you with yet another view of the audit trail, as well as a tool for further exploring the model space. Model 1.0 has 3 children, Models 2.0 and 5.0, as well as 1.1. This means that the other models were originally created by starting from the Model 1.0 sheet, launching a new model from there, and perhaps making some changes in the variables or output options. If you click on one of the children and hit the Go To button, you jump to its model sheet. You can similarly back up to the parent of a model. Sometimes you'll want to back up to an earlier point in a model sequence and branch off in a new direction from there. One more important tool on the ribbon is the Compare button. It resets the viewpoint of all model worksheets in the file to agree with the one currently in view, so the same table or chart appears at the very top. If you click this button and then jump from one model sheet to another, You can easily compare particular tables or charts in their output. Let's use the Down button to jump down to the forecast table and chart on the Model 1.0 sheet, and then hit the Compare button. If we now move to the sheets of the other models, we can directly compare their forecasts. That's all for this demonstration. I encourage you to do some more playing around in the file to get a better feel for the modeling options and navigation options that are provided by RegressIt's procedure menus and ribbon interface. And of course, try it out on your own data.